afternoon, everyone. It's Alyssa Corman, Ed Carson here with a look at the stock market today, which is holding near highs in a big earnings week. And Ed, we have a couple of stocks that had some pretty significant moves on their quarterly reports that we're going to take a look at, and one setting up with results due tomorrow.
That's right, Allie. We're going to take a look at Crocs and UPS, big gap ups today on earnings. And then we're also going to take a look at Align Technology, which has had a history of doing gap ups.
All right, well, let's take a look at the major indexes. The NASDAQ finishing down about 0.3% for the day, while the Dow and S&P 500 were essentially flat for the session. So nice to see the major indexes holding at their highs here.
Yeah, and it's not surprising. We've sort of been moving sideways really over the past couple of weeks when you know, ups and downs. And, you know, we have all the big earnings coming out starting really tonight. We had Tesla last night, but some of the big tech names. And, you know, the major indexes are going sideways. NASDAQ at highs, S&P and Dow basically at highs. So, you know, if really the S&P is now the 50-day line is sort of caught up a little bit. So if we do move higher from here, there'll be a little bit of room before we might start worrying about getting extended. So really this has been healthy, and we'll just have to see how these earnings, you know, move the market. Plus we have President Biden speaking tomorrow, also a Federal Reserve meeting tomorrow. So a lot of news in the coming days.
Yeah, potential to move the market there. And also checking in on small caps as well, seeing the Russell holding above this recently cleared level that was resistant, and a small gain today for small caps.
That's really positive. And while they're not necessarily the same, but growth stocks, a lot of them look a lot like that. You know, they sort of were struggling with the 50-day line and coming up.
And there's a IBD 50 ETF FFTY for a look at that. But a big move today on earnings from Crocs, CROX, gaining 15%, heavy volume here on this quarterly report that showed some really nice top line acceleration, Ed, and investors really liked the look of this report.
Yeah, I don't like the look of those shoes, but I gotta like the look at those earnings. You know, and that's the earnings and the stock action are just tremendous. And so, you know, it's really impressive. You know, they grew earnings last year, you know, and they're growing earnings again. So it's not like they're having easy comparisons, particularly. Really strong growth, gapped up. And so, yeah, they did have a consolidation. On a weekly chart, it had a legitimate one, but that's not really the, you know, where the buy point is. At this point, when you gap up like that, you have to take it off of, you know, maybe the opening price. What we were looking at today was the 5-minute bar. You know, on MarketSmith, the first minute that's a 1-minute bar, but it really works the same. That was the 5-minute bar. And then a few minutes later, it confirmed it. It came down a little bit, then confirmed it. And now it's like, okay, that's often an opportunity to buy, because you don't want to buy it right away, because sometimes the stock will hit a high and then give up all its gains. This did not.
That's exactly right. Those intraday charts can definitely come in handy. And we know from research that these earnings gaps often lead to further moves over, you know, the next couple of months. They can also kick off big runs for stocks. So we'll have to keep tabs on Crocs to see if that's the case, if it can hold this strong gain. That would be very important to see from this point. We typically like saying we don't want to buy extended stocks, but these earnings gaps are definitely the exception to that.
That's exactly right.
And also, we saw a big move from UPS today on its earnings report, up 10%, heavy volume here as well. Acceleration on both the top and bottom lines. What do you think about this move?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's pretty much the same. I mean, it's been consolidating for a little longer, but 4 quarters of accelerating earnings growth, 5 quarters of accelerating sales growth. It's hard to fight that. You know, it's just really impressive, that kind of move. Obviously, e-commerce growth has helped, but I think UPS and FedEx, they had spent a lot of money over the prior few years trying to get gear up for e-commerce, and I think they can really leverage that. And so even, I mean, they've had strong sales growth, but you know, even modest sales growth can really translate to the bottom line since they put in so many investments. Vaccine shipments helped as well. Yeah, the growth will eventually slow down because the e-commerce may slow down, but you know, there's no, e-commerce is only going to grow from here. So it's still got a bright future. Just really sort of a game changer a little bit in just how strong this is.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point about it being a game-changing move, because when you look at the weekly or monthly chart, that long-term outperformance isn't there, but maybe this is the catalyst for a character change, perhaps. And looking at the 5-minute chart here, popped up initially and was pretty much able to hold that gain for the rest of the day. Pulled back a little bit off of highs, but held it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a strong gain. So yeah, it didn't go up much higher after that first 5 minutes, especially that second bar, which is really sort of the 5-minute bar.
Mm-hmm.
But if you bought it there, then you're probably flat. You have to see how that goes. Definitely, earnings gaps have the potential for big gains. But with this or with Crocs or any others, there's also the potential that they won't work, and so you do have to
Yep.
get out. There's some risk involved. There's a high reward involved, but it's both ways.
Most definitely. So the more that the stock has going for it, all those other cancel elements that we like, that's of course putting the odds in your favor, but like you said, doesn't guarantee anything by any means. And will we see an earnings gap for Align Technology? Well, it's fixing gaps in your teeth, maybe, but making you smile there. Will the earnings report make investors smile, Ed?
I mean, yeah, we'll just have to see. That's tomorrow night. The stock has been coming up. It's got a cut-based buy point. Cut bases, they're a little more prone to pullback. So it's had these little mini pauses. So at least it hasn't run straight from the bottom. I mean, these were not handles. They weren't real shakeouts, but at least it didn't just run straight up. So that maybe gives you a little bit more confidence it might work. And the last 2 quarters, it had gap ups. Now, the first time it worked out really well. I mean, it was a little tricky, might have been tough to hold when it came down like that, but it ultimately, worked out relatively well. The next one, well, not so much. I mean, it based. Now, you can sort of excuse that because the whole NASDAQ sort of sold off. You can see that the relative strength line didn't get too bad, all in all. But gapping up in early February was not the best time for any breakouts in the tech space. But that can sometimes happen. But it's set up again, and so I definitely have to watch. But there's also been periods where this has had really bad losses. I mean, if you look at some weekly charts, it's sometimes hard to see, but there have been some big breaks on earnings as well. So don't just think, well, it'll gap up. It could gap down. This is definitely one that bad things have happened in the past. So, it's probably, if you don't have a position, you should probably wait for those earnings unless you're doing an options play, because,
Yes.
this is definitely, one that can really bite.
Yes. Buying a stock outright just ahead of its quarterly report is definitely a gamble. So we want to either look at that option, as you mentioned, Ed, or just wait for the reaction and then utilize those intraday charts as we were talking about there. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in today. The conversation is going to continue tomorrow morning on IBD Live, our daily morning live stream, long form discussions about market conditions, actionable stocks, portfolio management tips, and more. So we hope you join us with your comments and questions, investors.com/IBD Live. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.